Namaskar, friends.
Very good afternoon, Rajeshji. Once again, we are here with a new discussion.
Yes, this time it is The Untouchable by
Yes,
Mulkraj Anand.
this novel was published way back in 1935.
Still, we are discussing it
Yeah.
because, as like the literature, universal appeal of the literature, this piece finds a place there and it is relevant still.
Dr. Mulkraj Anand is one of three greatest novelists from India. The two
Yes.
other are
R.K. Narayan
and
and
Raja Rao.
Raja Rao. Raja Rao we have discussed once, Vinodji.
Yes, The Serpent and the Rope.
Yeah. And Mulkraj Anand was a doctor in philosophy. He had done his PhD on Bertrand Russell from England. So you can imagine the level of his thought.
And with the publication of his first novel, as I said, in 1935,
Right.
he immediately was shot to fame.
Yes, and people called him Charles Dickens of India.
Yes.
E.M. Foster had written the preface to the
Just to
Untouchable.
imagine E.M. Foster, one of the most celebrated writers of
Yes.
the time.
Passage to India is his famous work. So he had uh, written the preface, and he simply said, avoiding all the rhetoric and circumlocution, he plainly goes to the heart of the matter and purifies it.
Yes. And if you look at the title, he does not say an untouchable. He
No.
said the
The
untouchable.
Untouchable.
That means this pronoun, right, common noun rather, refers to all the untouchables of the society.
Well, what is this untouchability, Vinodji?
It was one of the evil practices of traditional Indian society. People who were born in so-called lower castes, they were regarded untouchables, that they had to live outside the village. They could not get education, they could not do the good jobs, and people were forbidden. The people from the higher castes, they were forbidden even to touch these people. By chance, if they touched them, they would think that as if they have been defiled or they have become
Polluted.
polluted.
In a religious way also, because religion is, one of the pivotal factors in Indian society even today.
And for many centuries, these untouchables continued to suffer in this way.
And they did all the menial jobs like cleaning latrines, like sweeping the streets. They did all of them, but contact with them in any way was forbidden.
And the hero, the protagonist
And it can
of
be
this
compared
novel,
to the racism in the West.
yes, racism, the discrimination between black and white.
Yeah, perhaps
Now,
it is not so horrendous, or we will not indulge in the comparisons.
yes, yes.
But it is one of the social evils of the West.
And you try to understand, in 1930s, it was the time of social reform. Gandhi was trying to reform the society. He wanted that the untouchability should disappear from the society. On the other hand, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar had started his Dalit reform movement, and he was really clamoring for the equality of rights for the depressed classes, and there was the impact of the liberal education on the intellectual people of India. So it was against this background Dr. Mulkraj Anand's novel appears on the scene.
Yeah, and it is not the abstract portrayal of the problem as such. It embodies the lived experience of the character called Baka, the son of Laka.
Yes, Baka is the protagonist. He's 18-year-old sweeper boy.
And he is Mulkraj Anand brings Baka to life. It is not simply a plain character, as you said.
And add to the character of the novelist, we must say
Yeah.
that he has adopted rather partially stream of consciousness technique. Whatever is happening in Baka's life, we are simply told from Baka's perspective.
Yeah.
These are the thoughts which are going on in his mind when he experiences various humiliating situations. And that this novel has been written in a very compact fashion. It starts in the morning and ends when Baka goes to sleep, full of various thoughts in his head.
Throughout the day, he is confronted with not one or two, but many, many humiliating experiences. And the root of all of them is the caste.
Caste.
The
He is untouchable
untouchability.
boy. The novel starts when Baka's old ill father is showering abuses on him and asks him to get up from the bed, whereas Baka is not ready. He's really feeling lazy. It's a time of winter and he does not want to go out of the bed. But he asks him that I am not well today. You have to even perform my job. And job was cleaning lanterns.
Yeah, the town hall and the streets of the town also, which his father used to do. So Baka does that because it is his duty. He has been brought up to do that.
And
I mean,
in the very first meeting when we meet Baka, we are simply impressed by his activeness. He goes to his job with activeness. He's so swift,
yeah,
so quick in cleaning these lanterns that all other sweepers are really surprised. And he comes home exhausted and wants to have a cup of tea, but there is no water in home. So Soini, his
sister goes
beautiful girl, goes to the well to fetch a patch of water.
from the well, and there she is eyed by the priest, who calls her to the temple later in the day and molests her.
Right, and this molestation of Sohani really puts Baka on fire. He wants to take a revenge from Kalinar, but Sohini prevails upon him that he should not do that because she's aware that we are untouchables and nobody is going to listen to Baka or to Sohini.
So this burden of the recognition of untouchability on their part, forget about taking revenge on the priest. Baka cannot even retaliate when he is slapped in the street by a person
Yes,
for accidentally touching him.
yeah, or the jalebis that he had just purchased, right? They are simply fall on the ground and mingle into the dust. He's so humiliated, so insulted that he feels very pained at that time. And even the shopkeeper of the sweet shop, he throws jalebis at him as if he were a dog.
And then when house owner comes to give him chapati, she throws it from upstairs, isn't it? And like that, he continues. This chain of humiliating experiences continues, but he is not able to do anything about them because he perceives him to be powerless himself. That perception is there. Powerlessness is there. Along with the powerlessness, it is internalized in a way. But in Baka, at least, it is not completely internalized because mentally he revolts.
Right. He's always aware that he does not deserve this kind of treatment.
Yeah.
He does not deserve this kind of humiliation and insults. He wants to rebel. He wants to change that situation, but he does not know what to do. And Baka is certainly different from millions of other untouchables who suffered their pain, who suffered their agony without any kind of protest. And then he is certainly different because novelist creates this character, a character who stands in midway. He on the one hand shares the powerlessness of millions of other untouchables who have been suffering for centuries. On the other hand, Baka is a new kind of boy, a new kind of rebel who is going to rebel against this kind of social exploitation.
Yeah, maybe mentally he is all for it, but physically, outwardly, he cannot really do anything about it. And when you read Mulkraj Anand as a whole, the whole corpus of his creation, you come across many such variations. Then in the story called Barber's Trade Union,
Yes, Chandu is another memorable character.
he changes. He is active. He is proactive. He takes initiative.
Yes.
But here, Baka, at least mentally, he is ready to do. But what to do, he doesn't.
And symbolically, Baka's desire for the refinement of life is also portrayed.
Yeah.
He wants to learn, he wants to take lessons, and for that, he's ready to pay 1 anna or 2 anna to his friend. He wants to put on the wonderful clothes like that of Sahibs. So, all these symbolic gestures on behalf of Baka bring out his innate desire to emulate a better pattern of life.
And then author gives us the glimpses of what lies next or what can happen. Charanjit Singh, the hockey player,
Charat Singh.
he calls Baka to his house, has tea with him, gives him the brand new hockey stick, and Baka goes to play hockey match.
And Baka is really surprised that somebody can give him new hockey stick. Now, what Mulkraj Anand perhaps is trying to say, that all people in higher castes were not so doomed. They did not have the same nature. There are good people like Charat Singh. So this is also a fact. So life is not all gloom.
Yeah. Some people, maybe Charat Singh has not internalized the bias of untouchability, or he has consciously resisted it. We don't know.
And Baka's character is not simply a type.
Yeah.
Mulkraj Anand has individualized him. When we get a peep into the working of his soul, and especially his romantic passion
Yeah.
for Chotu's sister.
And then Colonel Hutchinson,
Yes.
Christian missionary, who takes Baka to his home and asks him to come to church with him. Baka is rather bored by the chanting of hymns, but he's overjoyed when he takes him to home and offers him tea. But when he overhears his wife, Colonel's wife, admonishing him, then he is so sensitive that he runs away from there.
Now, this is one of the possibilities that
Yeah.
was one of the hopes that was
Hopes.
generated in the mind of Baka, that perhaps if he gets converted into Christianity, and perhaps Christians do not discriminate on the basis of caste, but when he hears the words, harsh words
Blackie.
of Blackie from the wife of Colonel, he is again disgusted. He says that again the same kind of discrimination is there.
And then the sermon of Mahatma Gandhi, when he goes and hears it, almost the entire thing goes above his head, but he hears two people discussing about it. He can't really understand, but he hears the word flush toilet, and they can ameliorate the situation of the
Now
untouchables.
again he catches a one word
Word,
from Mahatma
yeah.
Gandhi's speech, Harijans.
Harijans.
He understands that Gandhi is doing certainly something for Harijans, for the depressed classes, and he again a hope is generated in his heart that perhaps because of the message of Gandhi, situation may change.
change.
And then he meets Iqbal,
Iqbal.
a communist poet, and he tells him that the science is there, the flash system of the toilets is there, where entire dirt will be taken away by the machine, and people like Baka will not be required to carry the baskets of the dirt on their heads.
Now here, Vinodji, I think the author has explored many possible solutions
Yes.
to the age-old problem of untouchability, and finally has settled upon technology,
Yes.
that it can really remedy the ills of untouchability, because it will transform the entire work of cleaning the latrines and all those things. So, do we agree that it is perhaps the technology, as Osho also said,
Yes.
train did more to undo the caste system than thousand preachers?
Exactly. What I believe, what
Yeah.
Osho says, and even what Mulkraj Anand is hinting at,
Yeah.
is true. Because human beings, until and unless they are not compelled by the higher force,
Correct.
till that time they do not give up their old habits. So practice of untouchability, practice of sati, practice of casteism, all these were evil practices. But when it became impossible to practice them, only then people accepted the change. But this does not mean that the entire role of the social reformers, right from Dr.
Yeah,
Raja Ram Mohan Roy to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, we cannot simply cancel with a single stroke, because they prepared the mind. Those who were really sensitive, those who were really had a humanitarian understanding, they did change. But masses did not change. That is a fact.
Yeah, definitely. So technology has its role, but the social thought, social reform, or giving insights to the people, that also law also has its role. Untouchability has been abolished by this Article 17 of the Indian Constitution. It is another factor that it's an aspirational reality. Still, we cannot really say the flush toilets are the reality in today's India, but still,
The discrimination,
untouchability, caste discrimination
continues
has not
in one form or the
entirely
other.
gone away. Maybe the form has changed. 100 years ago, it was practiced very vehemently.
Yes.
Now it is in a milder form, subtle forms.
Yes, yes.
It is practiced, and in some way or the other, you do come across the caste discriminations here and there, and at many places rather in the Indian society.
Before we come, it
Yeah.
is necessary to state
Yeah.
that when people read Mulkraj Anand,
Yeah.
they sometimes misunderstand that Mulkraj Anand's writings are just propaganda,
Yeah.
because he's a committed writer.
Yeah,
He's a
yeah.
socially committed writer. He wants to reform the society. That is true. But at the same time, he is a great artist. When you read his novel or his story, you will realize that it is not a propaganda. It is a true work of literature. It's a true work of art.
Definitely, and it doesn't really take sides, but what is apparently bad, apparently malignant, he definitely condemns it. So in that way he is a committed writer. And some critics also, Vinodji, say that he has only portrayed the Gandhian discourse. Gandhi monopolized over the untouchability discourse, and Ambedkar and all those things, because Harijan means the people of the god, and many people have objections to this term. And Ambedkar said organize, educate and agitate. But definitely when you read
I
other,
do not I do
yeah,
not agree with this,
yeah,
because okay, so far as the this novel is concerned,
yeah,
it is true that he seems to be a little bit tilted to Gandhian discourse. But when you come to other writings, for
other
example,
writings,
Barber's
Barber's
Trade Union
Trade Union,
especially,
yeah, yeah.
where Chandu, a son of a barber, right, he understands the fact that why people exploit him, not because he belongs to a particular caste, but because he's economically dependent upon the higher caste.
Yes,
So
yes.
it begins to change the entire situation. There you see the entire discourse of Dr. Bhimrao
Definitely,
Ambedkar
definitely.
put at work.
Yes, and it is really the greatness of Mulkraj Anand that despite being a committed writer, when you read his literature, it is true literature. At nowhere do you feel that he is, preaching you or teaching you. And in this way, he conveys the idea so that it reaches our hearts and minds in a seamless
Today we
manner.
see hundreds and thousands of books written
Yeah.
by the Dalit writers or about the problems of Dalit. It is a very separate class of literature which we know by the name of
Dalit
Dalit
literature.
literature.
Yeah,
And once I had a little argument with a person who said that the person, if he is not Dalit himself, he cannot authentically portray the sorrows and sufferings of Dalits.
Mulkraj
But he-
Anand belies it.
Yes,
Definitely. He
yes.
was not from that caste.
Yes, in spite of that, when you read about Baka, you realize that entire portrayal is not only realistic, but it is authentic as well.
And Mulkraj Anand's sensibility was stirred by the family experiences also. One of his aunts had to commit suicide because she was excommunicated for sharing her meals with a Muslim woman.
And his father was in Indian Army, and therefore his job was a transferable job. And Mulkraj Anand moved with his father from place to place, so he had the chance to make friends with people from the different castes, including the untouchables.
Yeah, and one more thing I would like to say. Many times it is a prejudice, particularly in the West, that India and these Eastern cultures are barbaric. Like untouchability is cited and sati is cited, but I would like to say that it is no way different than racism. The horrors of racism are also well documented, and as late as 1950s and 60s.
Yeah, and
And
the
still
horrors of
today.
horrors of slavery.
Horrors of Holocaust, horrors of slavery, the slavery, racism, all and untouchability, all these are the manifestations of the same underlying idea that we are superior, others are inferior due to any factor. If you take untouchability, I would say the genesis of untouchability lies in the fact that people who did the menial jobs, naturally they were the carriers of the disease, which
Exactly.
were very dreaded, and when you touch them, you would most probably fall ill or rather die also. So people were very afraid, and they demarcated certain castes to do certain jobs and not to touch them.
Exactly.
But then it got very distorted in the course of the time.
Yes, yes.
So all these are the, and what is the genesis of the race, I don't know. So that may also lie in something like that, I don't know. But ultimately it boils down to thinking that we are somehow superior and others are somehow inferior.
On the whole, this novel,
And Mulkraj
Untouchable-
Anand, a very famous statement, Vinodji, when
Yes,
he
yes.
said, when I wrote Untouchable,
yes,
I had outgrown all the systems of philosophy, including humanism. What do you make of it?
um,
It's very, yeah,
perhaps when we look at philosophy
yeah,
as a saving force for humanity,
yeah.
perhaps some thought, perhaps some theory that will help human beings to improve, and perhaps we will be able to establish true equality among all the human beings. But after studying philosophy, he came to the conclusion that no
it is-
theory, no
yeah.
thought can save
Correct.
mankind or human race. No theory can help us to acquire true equality, and therefore he turns towards the innovations of the science and technology, where everything will be accessible to all.
Like Francis Bacon, who said that many of the ills of the society would be solved by the technology. Or rather, I would take his statement to mean that he emphasized concrete action rather than pure speculation of philosophical theories.
And what he believed, it has come true to very great extent. Today we realize that technology has provided solution to many of the problems.
Yeah, but still the ideas do matter, and action motivated by ideas has a great potential to bring about positive change.
So on the whole, The Untouchable, this novel
And
is
artistically,
really a great
the
novel.
way in which it is written, Vinod, is entertaining all and throughout, right from beginning to the end.
The moment you start
Yeah.
reading this novel, you will not give it up till
Yeah,
the end.
yeah, definitely.
So
So-
we recommend this novel. You read it, enjoy it, understand it, ponder over the problems of the society.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.